Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Mile 17 podcast. It's Colton. I have a fun little episode planned for today. It's going to be very lighthearted and just to kind of give you more of an insight on how I got my baby girls and kind of the process that I had to go through to rescue a dog versus buying a dog from a breeder, and kind of my thoughts on how they've definitely shifted and changed over the years on how I feel about this topic because it's very controversial and I think for good reason. I think that there's a good reason, and people that come from a place of only wanting to rescue dogs, I think that comes with the best intentions, and although sometimes it can come off very judgmental towards people who buy dogs from breeders, I think there's very good reason for it, and I'm going to kind of dive into why I feel that way. But first, I want to introduce you to my baby girls, which, if you follow me on social media, you already know I post them all the time. But yeah, I just want to kind of give you a little insight on their lives and how I got to adopt Ellie and Kona. So we'll start with Ellie. You'll hear Kona walking around because she is very hyper. The weather here in Boston has just been so gray, so rainy. It's been so hard to get the dogs out to get their proper exercise. And Kona is not even 2 years old yet. So, oh my God, the amount of energy that she has built up in her body is insane. But yes, let's start with Ellie. So, Ellie is almost 9. She's my rescue dog. And I don't know if you can see her there on the couch. No, she's a little bit too low. I'll show you. I'll introduce her. Ellie, come here. If everybody can see, if you're watching on videos, this is a good video to watch on YouTube. But if you look behind me, you'll see Ellie on the couch there. She's so sweet. She's like I said, she's gonna be 9 this year. I can't believe it. I adopted Ellie when she was 9 weeks old. I was in college, so I was either 19 or 20 when I adopted Ellie, and I remember, and yeah, I remember I had just gone through a breakup, and my girlfriend at the time and I had a dog that was hers, but I helped kind of, raise him through his beginning stages of life in his puppy stage. And I really just got attached. And that was the first time I had ever been attached to a dog. And I remember we were young and so immature. We've talked about this now, like everything's fine. But we were very young, very immature. And I remember like when we broke up, I would like still like go, like I had friends that lived in her apartment complex. And so I would still go over there to make sure I could like see the dog because I was like that attached to him. And so from then on, like I just had this like hole inside of my chest, like in my heart that I just needed to fill. And growing up, like I always had dogs, but I never had that like attachment to a dog before that I had with that puppy that I had with that girlfriend in college. And so whenever I had moved into a house my sophomore year of college and we had plenty of space and my sister had already had a dog, I really just wanted one. So I started going to the Humane Society. I'd gone a couple times and I really wanted a puppy because I wanted to just like raise it as my own. I was 19, 20. I just wanted that like puppy connection. And so I was bound and determined to find a dog. And I wanted a boy dog because that's the dog that I had had with my girlfriend at the time, my ex-girlfriend, was a boy dog. So that's really what I was trying to fill. And so I had kind of like, and this is kind of a sad story, I had kind of picked out a dog and he was like almost a year. I had seen him at the shelter a couple times. Didn't really feel like super connected to him, but I just felt sad because he had been there. And so I'd gone a couple times and I was like, okay, fine. Like, I'll just, I'll take him home. And I had gone to the front. And as I'm up there, this lady, so where I went to college, a little backstory, where I went to college in Flagstaff, it's in Arizona, there's a lot of reservations surrounding Flagstaff, and a lot of dogs come off the reservation. There's a lot of homeless dogs there. And I remember being up at the front counter, and all of a sudden, this lady just brings in like 12 puppies. Like they're just like bringing them in, bringing them in. And I was like, oh my gosh, I need to look at these dogs. And they had to quarantine them. They weren't even out on display for people to walk through the shelter to look at. And so I go back there and there's 12 little puppies running around. Before I had gone back, they had told me like, oh, they're all girls. There's not a single boy out of 12 puppies. And I was like, oh my God, I just want a boy. But it didn't really matter. So I went back there and I was like, there's puppies just kind of everywhere. Like they're only nine weeks old, and little Ellie, my little baby girl Ellie, just like walks up to me and just like puts her little paw on me, and I was dead, melted inside, like absolutely dead. And that was it. I was like, this is the one. I would think I was back there for maybe, I don't know, 3, 5 minutes. Mind you, there's 12 puppies. Like you could spend hours back there. And she just came up, put her little paw on me, and I was like, she chose me. I'm done. This is it. And so with the way it works at the shelter, at least the one in Flagstaff, is I paid $100, and that included them to spay her and her first round of like all her shots. So I adopted her that day. This was August. I think it was right before my semester of school was about to start, or maybe we had just started. I don't really remember. Either way, crazy to get a puppy at the start of a semester, by the way, but I did it anyways. And so then the next day, you go pick them up at the vet office because that's where they spay them. And so I went and picked up my little Ellie. She had casts on both her back legs because they removed some dew claws, and spayed her, and she got some shots. And I took her home. And mind you, she also had mites. So she was a mess. Like, look at this little precious angel. She was a mess when I got her. And truthfully, like she was not a great puppy, but I was also so young. Like I had no idea what I was doing. And she really, really ran. She really was the one that was in control. So that's the story of how I adopted Ellie. Now, Ellie has been through a lot. We have moved a lot because I was in college. Like this dog was just about to go with me through every stage of my life so far. And so I moved from Flagstaff to the Phoenix area. I moved a bunch of times within that time being in Phoenix. And when we had decided to move out to Boston, of course, Ellie came with us. So she's really lived in a bunch of places. She's a very go with the flowy kind of dog. And I love her so much. Like I really, really am an advocate for rescuing dogs. One, it's a lot cheaper, and two, like there's so many dogs that need rescued, and so many older dogs and puppies, and if you have like the means to do so and like the space to do so, I think just like rescuing like those older dogs just so that they can live out the rest of their life is like such a beautiful thing to do. And if you do that, you're an angel sent to earth. Like these dogs really need people. And I think that if I had like the means to, I really think that I would have like older rescue dogs just to like give them a life, let them live it out. Like they're so sweet, so pure. Like just look at that face. Like seriously, if you're I'm going to put this video on Spotify because people need to see this. Like she's just precious. I love her so much. And so yeah, that's how I got Ellie. Okay, I'm going to give her a treat because she's so sweet for being featured in my podcast and just chilling because she's the best girl, really. Here you go. Tasty treat. There you go. She's also very lazy. Okay. And then there's this crazy dog. This is Kona. She is my wild, wild child. Granted, she's not even 2 years old, so I'll give her that excuse. But we did not adopt Kona from a shelter. She is a mini golden doodle, and we were really kind of wanting like a second dog, and we really wanted a doodle. One being really tired of the dog hair. Ellie sheds really bad, and I've been dealing with that for almost 9 years now, so I'm a little bit over it. Love her to death, but tired of the dog hair. So we wanted to get a little doodle, and we did some research, and we ended up finding this breeder that had golden doodles. And again, I was very weary about it because like I don't know a whole lot about breeders, but what I do know is there are a lot of really bad ones and a lot of puppy mills out there and a lot of people producing dogs that end up having like terrible health problems, or just live in terrible conditions. They don't treat the moms well. Like they're just getting these dogs pregnant just to produce more dogs in order to make more money. And I'm not about that. Like that's not okay. There's nothing okay with breeding dogs just to get the money if there's not vets involved, if there's not ethics and morals and values and just a proper way to breed these dogs. And it's a very fine line for me. Like the people that you see out on at the grocery store with a box of puppies that they're selling, like not okay. Like that's just not okay. There's a way to go about it. And I used to be all against buying from any breeder at all, But again, I have changed my perspective on that a little bit just because, if you want a specific kind of dog, like you have to kind of go that route. It's really hard to find like rescues for specific dogs, like especially for like a doodle. Like it would be very hard to find a doodle like in a shelter. So we went that route, and let me tell you, a lot more expensive. I'm just going to be totally honest and transparent here. We spent about $3,000 on Kona, which is a lot for this. She gives me a lot of stress, and like just look at her like she's crazy. So I'm just saying it was definitely a lot more expensive. Like if you're wanting that companion, that dog, and you're not exactly sure how to go about it, like I highly, highly, highly recommend heading to the shelter, checking out the dogs that they have there, and maybe trying to set up a way to get a dog from the shelter. I think rescuing is by far the best route to go. But if you're going to go through a breeder, just do your research, make sure there's ethics involved, values, morals, and that you're not just buying from a puppy mill who's producing all these dogs that are not healthy and that the conditions are terrible. Okay, I'm gonna put Kona down because she's wild and out. But again, this is Kona. That's Ellie, my rescue. Say hello, girls. Say hello. Okay, now be quiet so Dad can finish. So yeah, so we had adopted Kona here in the Boston area from a breeder, and the process was pretty smooth. Again, we spent like $3,000, but we met the lady who was breeding the dogs, and it seemed like the conditions for the dogs were very well taken care of, and I didn't have to worry about that aspect of it. And so far, I mean, she's almost 2, so you never know, but like no, nothing really drastic with her health has popped up. So again, do some research. Don't just go buying a dog just to buy a dog. It's a huge commitment. And especially if you're college age or, a young adult, like it's a real commitment to get a dog. Like you have to realize that there's so many things that come with it. And I think that I really realized this when I moved out to Boston because when I first had just Ellie, I had other dogs. My ex-girlfriend and I had also adopted another dog after Ellie. And so I've gone through that process of adopting and having puppies and having dogs many of times, and it's a lot of work. Like they need attention, they need exercise. Like you have the dog food, the care as far as their shots go, the vet follow ups, the if there's any injuries. Like it's a lot of work, and if you don't have a yard, it's a commitment every day. My dogs usually go out about 3 times a day on average, and with me and Kai working here in Boston, there's days that we're both gone for 12 plus hours. We have to make sure we have a dog walker in here. Sometimes Kona goes to dog daycare. And let me tell you, when we go on vacation, that's the biggest stress because if you can't find people to watch them, then you're boarding them, and that's a huge cost. So if you're thinking about getting a dog, you need to factor all this in, like have a plan. When I lived back home in Arizona, like we had a ton more resources to have Ellie taken care of because I had a bunch of family out there, friends who were able to just kind of step up when I needed to, get out. I could like last second be like, call someone up and be like, hey, I'm dropping Ellie off. Is that cool? And it was so much easier. We've had a little bit more of a struggle here in Boston just because people don't really have as much of the means to really take care of a dog because a lot of people here are in apartments and are gone for work versus back home in Arizona, people had yards, dog doors. So it was like much easier to just like go drop Ellie off and she had access to outside, or she at least just like had a place to stay. So if you're considering adopting a dog, just think of all these things, and it can be pricey. If there's an injury, I remember when my sister first got her dog Jax, I had taken him to a dog park before I had Ellie in Flagstaff, and he got attacked, and he was a puppy, like very very little, got attacked and ended up having to go for emergency surgery. They almost had to amputate his leg, and the surgery costed my sister a couple $1,000s. And same dog, a few years later, had a toy stuck around his jaw, had to go to the emergency vet, have it sawed off, a couple $1,000s. Like these things can happen. And if you're not prepared to take care of, take care of business, take care of the dog, like it can be very stressful. And, these also things come with like behavioral issues or, you just never know what's going to happen. Like they could get chronically sick and you have to start, medicating them. Like it's just like having a little child, a little bit less, it's like you're not, I shouldn't say it's just like having a child, but it's similar in the sense like it's a responsibility and, you've really got to take care of them. So if you're considering getting a dog, just keep that stuff in mind. And if you're kind of in between rescuing versus buying from a breeder, just really consider the pros and cons. Like rescuing, like you really can't go wrong. Like these dogs are so sweet. They need a home. If you're adopting a dog that's a little bit older, maybe even like mid-age, like 3, 4, 5, like you need to understand that they probably have some behavioral issues because they've been abandoned, they've been surrendered, like you have no idea what they've been through, how they're gonna react to certain things. So it's just important to do your research and get help, like find resources to kind of help you transition these dogs into your home. And something that I've realized is these dogs also have like very different needs. Like, and you almost forget because when I adopted Kona, Ellie was, 7-ish, already kind of like getting older, like chilling out, mellowing out, like needs less exercise. Brought Kona into the mix, and I was like, oh yeah, I forgot what it was like to have a puppy and the energy and like the time that it takes to like exercise them and like just make them, just meet their needs because they have needs too. And like, there's nothing worse than just like feeling like you're not doing enough for your animals and that you're not giving them a good enough life or like that they're not getting enough exercise. Like I'm very hard on myself and I will like get myself to that point where I'm like, oh my God, like I'm working too much. Like they feel like I'm leaving them, like they're not getting enough exercise. And it's especially living somewhere like Boston, like in the winters when it's like dark and gray and rainy and snowy and like they just don't get out as much. It can be a difficult obstacle to kind of get around. So yeah, I really just wanted to do this episode, introduce you to my baby girls. I love them so much. I'm very passionate about my dogs. And again, as far as rescuing and buying a dog goes, just do your research and weigh the pros and cons. And just all I can ask is please make sure you're doing it with, ethics and morals and that there's like values behind the people that you're buying from and that you're not just like going to some puppy mill. I can't reiterate that enough. It's so sad. It's so terrible. And these people who do that, like shame on them. It's not fair to all these dogs because, a lot of these dogs end up back in the shelters and it's just terrible. So do your research and it can be the best thing you ever do getting a dog. And just realize though it can also be very stressful, and especially if you're younger and don't really have like the resources. But they provide you with such companionship, and if you think you can take on the challenge and you think you can handle it, then I say go for it. Like you can't beat the love of a dog and just having that partner. Like I've gone through so much and a lot of heartache and changes in my life, especially like with Ellie, because, I've had her my entire adult life. Like, adopting her when I'm 19, 20 years old, like she's been pretty much here my entire adult life and through everything with me. And really has been the one thing that's remained constant and there in my life. And it's something very special. And I love her so much. I just went down to Tennessee to pick her up because she was with my sister for a couple months. And oh, I couldn't believe how, just good it felt to just like have her back in my arms. And, that was the longest I'd ever gone without her since I've had her, was about that 3 months. So, um, yeah, that's really all I've got for you today. Thanks for hanging out and meeting Ellie and Kona. They are the lights of my life. I love them so much. Whenever I'm having a tough day or really down on myself, like I can always just like sit on my floor with my dogs or take them out and, let them go play in the water or run around in the grass. And a little bit better when it's sunny out, but I just, I really just love them. And again, if you have the means to do so, go get a dog, go rescue a dog, and do your research. Okay. So that's the Mile 17 podcast today, all about dogs. Like, follow, subscribe to the show on YouTube. Follow me on Instagram at ColtonLord17, at TikTok at ColtonLord17, and YouTube at ColtonLord. This was a fun episode. I'm so glad I got to introduce you to my baby girls, and we'll catch you guys next time. Stay tuned. We've really got some great guests with great, inspiring, motivating, and just like life-changing stories. And I can't wait for you guys to hear them. So we'll be having those coming up. So I'll talk to you guys later. Again, this is Colton. This is the Mile 17 podcast. We'll see you later.